So I'm, as you heard, recording.
We are notified.
Okay, so hello and welcome and good evening and welcome once more to the, to the fourth session in the course, How to Start Up. My name is Paul Silich, and that hasn't really changed since the first three sessions. And first of all, I'd like to say that it was really great to see and hear from you all last week when we had the checkpoint call. And yeah, not only to hear from you, but also learn about your amazing ideas and to see that there is progress. And yeah, and to see about hear about your ambitions regarding the ideas. So once more, I'd like to thank those of you who joined the last week's checkpoint call. And I hope you also enjoyed it just to hear and see what the other teams are working on. And regarding your pitch decks, you will receive the feedback on them during this week. So yeah, you will still have plenty of time to change them or to adjust them before the pitch competition on the October 25th. But yeah, during this week, you will receive the feedback. And yeah, as I mentioned previously before I started recording, to the ones that can, please feel free to turn on your cameras, as it just makes it a bit easier and more comfortable for us, the speakers here, so to say, because yeah, seeing you makes all the difference. Hey, I see, yeah, everybody. And yeah, and also regarding the questions today, there are of course two options. One is to write the question in the chat, but if you feel brave enough or just comfortable enough, I'd say, then feel free to use the raise a hand option and ask the questions live, because you can certainly do it that way. And yeah, as I already mentioned, this is already our fourth session, which means that we are kind of nearing the end of this course. Of course, there are two more lectures and then sessions and then the pitch competition, but still, we are over the middle of it. And we are also nearing that one moment when you will have to pitch in front of everyone else and a jury. So remember, on October 25th, we are going to have the pitch competition. So please mark your calendars. Even if you're slightly scared of pitching in front of, well, everyone, this is an experience that you need to have. And especially if you want to build your own startup, there is almost no way that you are going to evade pitching in front of people. So yeah, it's a huge part of it. And that's why this is the perfect playground where to test it out, where to raise your skills at that. So yeah, but more information regarding the pitch competition is going to follow. So please keep an eye out for the announcements channel on Slack, as I will post all the technical details and other important things regarding it over there. Also, regarding the prizes, I will also post the information there. So, but about today, the main reason why anyone would pitch their company is to attract funding. Well, also to get the word out, but funding is definitely one of the main reasons. So today you will learn about different types of funding and in different types of funding, in which case, which type of funding is the best fit, and also how to go about attracting it. And for that reason, I'd like to give the virtual stage over to Diāna Lāce-Davidova, who is the deal lead at the Tallinn-based Superangel VC, former CEO of Latvian Startup Association, and the ex-investment director at the Riga-based Overkill Ventures. Diāna, well, the stage is yours.
All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. I think we haven't met before in any other circumstances, but I'm happy to see a crowd of new people, and that's always exciting. Thank you, Paul, for the warm intro. It's always lovely to return to Tech Hub, at least virtually. It's definitely home to startups, and then it's a lovely place to be. So today, my main goal is really to tell you guys about my experience in investing in companies, and kind of my view on how an early stage founder like you yourself can attract funding. One more note on how this lecture is going to go is that you're not watching this on Zoom. You have carved out an hour and a half of your time to tune in live. So please make sure that you ask questions in real time and give feedback and kind of be active, because otherwise this is no other than just a Zoom course you could be watching from, a train or any other moment. So just really want to stress that let's make the most out of a one-to-one interaction we have here, or rather one-to-many we have here. And although I know this is like a predominantly Latvian audience, let's try to get the shyness out of the door and then really be more active in terms of asking questions. With that kind of being said, I'll just start sharing my screen. So you should be able to see it full screen as well, right?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect, thank you. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about fill in the next hour-ish and then open up the floor to the open mic type of questions and to discuss the finding funding topic for early stage companies, which I think is very important. There are loads of ways how you can go around it, but we'll try to tackle it in a very logical way. So before that, I wanted to just lay ground of why I think I can kind of add some value on this topic is that for the past 5 years, I have spent mostly in an investment space here in the Baltics. I have been in 2 VC funds here in Riga and in Tallinn now. I also have a little bit of exposure to teaching and lecturing these subjects at Stockholm School of Economics in Riga, which is also my home university, which I graduated a few years ago. And on top of it, I also really like giving back to the community and in Global Shapers Riga, which is a World Economic Forum backed organization, where we also deal a lot with attracting funding for NGOs. So I think I have kind of good exposure both to the commercial side of fundraising and also the NGO side of fundraising. So I hope that I can answer questions on anything that you guys might have with these projects or anything else. So what's the agenda for today? Let's be as structured and as to the point as we can. I'll talk first about the logic of raising money. And although it's kind of a phony title, like why would you, like logic of raising money is to have money, right? But there is kind of some thinking behind it, how you should think about when you're attracting capital. Next, we'll discover which investor invests in which stage. Which is very important so that you know who are the investors you can attract and who are the kind of entities you can talk with. We'll go one by one with who are the main players in the field. We'll cover who are angel investors, who are accelerators and incubators. We'll largely focus on kind of Baltic and European kind of markets, because that's basically the home base which I think majority of the audience is at. But obviously we can also touch upon some US based practices too. And lastly, we're gonna finish off with the fundraising process, which I hope can give you an overview of how how to lead a negotiation with an investor. By all of that, I think it will take about an hour of our time, and we'll have more time for questions and discussions at the end of it as well. So we'll kick off with the logic of raising money. And first thing to say, when you really think about attracting an investor, I'd say it's like tongue-in-cheek, but it's still like getting married for 10 or 15 years and with very little chances of divorce. Some people say that even getting married is easier because you have a way out. With investors, you sometimes also have a way out, but it's typically requires hefty lawyers' fees. So what I'm trying to say, get across here is that investing is very, very kind of time-consuming and very long-term decision you'll make for your companies. So it's important to start thinking about it from the very first day, because as you're building your business, you'll be fundraising every single day of how long will you be building this startup. Otherwise, of course, there are other types of building a business like bootstrapping, which we are not going to cover it here. But it's obviously an excellent way you can build business by investing your profits into research and development. However, it's not always the case that the company can do that and has these profits to invest. So we are going to cover only the investing angle from professional investors. So the key question is really when to fundraise. And to discuss that, I want to kind of give you a glimpse of how investors look at investing. And I think the key thing is that fundraising is basically about creating this FOMO that the train is leaving the station and you have a packed station of people and you want to fit in the investors in the train. What I here it's the key thing to think about is that you want to be in a very strong position when you fundraise, and in each stage of your business you have your own strengths. Let's say you all have an idea now. Maybe you have, guys, if you have, you can unmute or write in the chat. How do you think at the idea stage, what's the strongest point about your company that investors will take a look at? Anyone wants to take a guess? Or you can also unmute and talk, it's also great. Okay, Paul, can you read it maybe for me? I have chat somewhere hidden.
Okay, so the first one by Rafa, he wrote, it's unique. Next comment by Nikolai's team. Then we have another by Rafa, attractive idea. Then by Leon, also team.
All right, so all good ideas, but I would say that the key thing really about this, like the idea stage company, is not really the idea, it's about the people who are building it. And that's kind of the critical aspect you have to think about, is that if you have an idea, and it's probably going to change a lot of times when you're going to build out your company, you still want to gather the strongest people you know around to build a company. You want to have the strongest engineers, you want to have the kind of you want to have yourself the strongest business or marketing understanding if you have this tandem with the other co-founder, and so on. So really the key thing in your stage to think about is the team, and then comes the idea. It's obviously important as well. You can't really raise without an idea. I mean, in some cases you can if you have an excellent track record, and that's actually what's happening in the Silicon Valley, in also in some more advanced ecosystems. Is just that people come up to investors and say, you know, I have just exited like a company, I want to build something new, give me more money. And actually they typically do. But for that, you have to have a good track record, and that takes time to build. So here really, if you as a founder, you need to create this FOMO in the investor's eyes, but it's very, very difficult because on the other end of the game, you know, on the investor's email, you look something like this. They have the empty train and they only want to select like 1 or 2 passengers to board the train. And that's the kind of the paradox of investing, is that you want to kind of create the impression that you have loads of investors, but the investors only invest in some of the candidates that apply. For instance, in Superangel, we screen around 1,000 applications a year, only to invest in about 12 to 15. Which kind of gives you the probability angle to it, is that some people say that it's easier to get an NBA contract as a basketball player than to get a proper VC funding, but it's not as bad as it sounds. It's actually doable. You just need to know these key things. And what I'm about to tell you in the following hour is actually, I think if you have all this knowledge in your mind, you have a very good chance, if not to make it to the 10, like Superangel invests in, you can definitely make it to the 150 we take a call with. And that's what you want. What you want is essentially having a call with the investor to actually prove that you have the idea, and then you can convince them and negotiate later on. So with this kind of lyrical entree, if you will, I hope it kind of gives you the impression about what we are trying to create here. We're trying to create this gigantic vision about your startup company that you're going to pitch to investor, and what this can be become eventually. So basically what you really need to have if you want to kind of have a strong fundraising round together is, I would say at an idea stage, kind of the stage you are at, the MVP idea stage, you have to have at least 1 to 2 out of these 3. You have to have either a strong traction, and a strong team, or you have a strong team and a booming market. If you have all 3, this is perfect. If you have 2 of those 3, this is actually very good. If you have only the strong team, it can actually work as well, but it will be much harder. So having at least like 2 out of 3 of these will put you in a stronger position to create this FOMO in the eyes of investors, because this is essentially the criteria that all investors look at when they evaluate the incoming application for a potential investment. So this is kind of the first kind of glimpse at when to kind of fundraise and what are the key things to look at. let's go into greater detail. Let's look at who are the people, who are the investors that that back companies at the particular stages. So this is like a very simple graph that takes a snapshot of how typically the startup lifecycle goes. So let's assume that right now you are somewhere in the corner, in the left corner, where it's just the very beginning, right? As the time passes, you'll add more investors to it. But how it basically goes is that first stage fundraising is first investors in any company are the co-founders, or basically you guys, because you invest your most valuable resources, you invest your time. And that's something that is the most vital of it all. For like either 3 months or 2 years or however long it takes you, you invest time and you don't receive any money for it. So that's kind of the first investment you make in your company. That's what it takes to build an MVP for you. And that's what kind of it just generally takes to get to an investor. After that, when you have kind of built something you can show, and mind that MVP can look very different. I'm sure you have covered this in the previous sessions, that in some cases MVP means a sort of a pilot-ready product. In some cases, MVP can mean a subscriber list of 1,000 or 2,000 emails of people who want to use your product. It can be very different. That can show your readiness to market. And it's up to you to decide what do you need to actually raise this capital. But like logically and kind of, if we look at the helicopter view at this, then the stages are as follows. The first investors in the company are angels and friends, family, and fools, or basically the people who believe in your first. This is the stage where kind of the most riskiest investments happen. This is where private individuals invest in companies because they expect very large returns. People who have invested in Uber, Bolt, Airbnb, they have capitalized hundreds of millions of dollars on 10 or 15 or 20K investments, which seems incredibly crazy, but that's how it happens if you invest early on. And these crazy people, they invest out of their own pocket, and they want to do it at the earlier stages as possible. I'll cover each and every kind of category of these investors later on, but I just want to give you a glimpse of which stage is what you should be looking at. In parallel with angels, some founders actually go to accelerators or incubators for funding. That's also very often the case, that especially what I see now in Baltics with a few accelerators on the market, is that the first investor in a company is not even an angel investor, which typically have been the case like 5 years ago. Right now, actually, it might as well be an quite an aggressive stake from an accelerator that's locally investing in early stage companies. Then, only then, after these like first stage investments, typically only then venture capitalists come in. Venture capitalists are the investors who actually invest for, like, this is their job to invest. That's basically what I also do for a living. I get paid for making good decisions. That's why you kind of spend all day talking to people and trying to make these good decisions. And I still don't know if they are any good, right? I'll have to look at 10 years of my portfolio to actually kind of have any idea, are they good or bad? But that's kind of, you have to understand this key differentiator, that angels are people that are personally investing in you, and venture capitalists, funds, that are investing in Series A, in seed stage, and so on, are actually people who are doing it professionally, and they get actually paid and remunerated for that. After kind of VC investments, and those can take numerous stages and numerous years, typically these investors want to exit the investments because they want to make money on the money they have invested in your company. And that typically takes place via 3 routes, I would say. It can go either to public market or on a stock market, or it can be sold to another company through a merger and acquisition, or something that's very popular these days is also an acqui-hire. Fun fact: if in the United States, if you sell a company with 5 engineers, which are very good, let's take an AI engineers. The acquisition price adds 1 million per engineer. So imagine that you have a business and your valuation will be 5 million on top of it because you have 5 outstanding AI engineers. That's just crazy to think about it, but that's how the valuations are done. So just, yeah, putting some shiny things in front of you so you can also see that there's ways to make money in this business as well. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of walk you through this diagram. What's important here is that there are basically like numerous stages and numerous kind of names you will come across. So there's pre-seed investments, there are seed investments, and there are series A, B, C, D, E, F investments. So basically these are the stages in which which people invest in the company. Pre-seed is the stage where angels and FFFs invest. It's also pre-seed to seed, where the accelerators invest. Then it's kind of moves to an early stage, and then already a later stage company. So if we look at this graph here, a company with under 10 employees would be something we would consider a seed stage company. An early stage company would be something we would consider 10 to, I would say, a few hundreds of employees. And then a later stage company is something that's, more closer to unicorn status. It's a company that's, 200 and plus employees in terms of the staffing. So this is just a kind of a glimpse of it. We're going to go one by one through the things I just described, and I hope it's going to shed more light on each of the topics. So let's go into looking at what are the types of funding and what kind of money can you expect, and what's the general logic for it. So I think the first, as I already said, the first investors you want to take a look at are the business angels. Business angels are high net worth individuals. They invest out of their own pocket. They invest because they are experts in the field, or they want to learn more about the space. I'm going to list a couple of do's and don'ts with every of the investor type, because each of them have their own pros and cons, I would say. I think the main thing when you're looking for an angel investor is looking into someone who is truly a value add. You want to add to your company someone who is smart money investor, as they call them. Sorry, pause. I don't know why, but it shows me that it's 9 minutes left in this call.
I just noticed that this is, sorry for the interruption. I'm gonna try to fix this while we are talking, because it shouldn't be this way.
Okay, happens. Startup way. If I get cut off at one point, I hope we'll return to this. So for the first thing, it's really, you have to look to someone who has done something in the field you're building a company in. I think that's the most important thing. If you look for business angels, you want to look for someone who is accomplished in, for instance, HR, or in building startups, or in something that you are building the company in, because that way this person can give you not only the capital that you need for advancing the business, but they can give you the most valuable resource, their advice. And that's what's kind of the top-notch angel investors are known, not for their capital, they're known for their advice. Exactly. And what's kind of important to take into account is that those investors are typically investing on their personal opinion. They are not conducting any kind of research on the topic. They typically just meet with you. They will either kind of like what you're building, and they'll say, eventually will want to say yes, or they'll just say no straight away because that's something that they're not interested in. That's something you have to take in kind of mental note of, because when you're talking to angels, it's basically a very personal sales process that you are doing with the person. You're trying to sell your vision to the first buyer or the first investor. And what's very critical here is that it takes time to develop a personal relationship and trust, because as these people are investing from their own pocket, they are, more maybe looking to get that money back. So it's obviously that they want to invest into someone who they trust. So don't be too surprised if it takes a few months to actually have this relationship with the person. And that's what you have to take into account into the timing. So if you think you can raise like 50,000 euros and you need 5 angels, each giving 10,000 euros in that round, then remember that it might take from 3 to 6 months to actually establish this relationship. So if you are right now thinking that you will need 50,000 euros in February 2022, you should be starting today building these relationships and building your investor pipeline and actually working on it to have this money in your bank account in February or March 2022. I know it sounds maybe overwhelming and there's so much to think about, but this is exactly the mechanic how you should go, because fundraising always takes more time than you expect it to take. And that's very important to be kind of over prepared rather than under prepared. Then going into the don'ts, and I see something is a little bit wrong here, but I'll correct it in the final version of the slides. I think the key thing that founders make a mistake here on is giving too much away of their company. I have seen numerous Latvian companies who are moderately successful right now, but have given an enormous stake to an investor. So my rule of thumb and really advice to everyone here is, if an investor wants to take more than 20% of your company, run. You don't need that. Basically, if you give away so much, you will not be able to raise any round after that. These so large shareholdings are even considered toxic, and really be aware that a kind of a market standard is something up to 10%, really, and that's even a lot. You shouldn't be giving away your company for free for so little money, and that's something you really have to, I would urge you to think about. Business angels typically invest anywhere from, it can be actually from 1,000 to 100,000, but the typical check size in Baltics, I would say, is 10 to 50K. I have also listed here a couple of resources for you, which might be helpful. As you probably are more or less based in Baltics, here are a few lists that I think is useful. Each country has their own business angel network, and they host pitching session almost every month. So you roughly have 3 pitching sessions every month happening in each of the in all the countries. So whenever you're ready, I would really suggest you take a look at SBAN or like Estonian Business Angel Network or Lithuanian Business Angel Network, and also the Latvian Business Angel Network, that what they have to offer, because that's kind of your the chance to open the door with the investors in here locally. So these are the 3 associations with investors that are very active. I would personally, yes, perfect. Now the meeting has been upgraded. Thank you. So I would personally recommend to maybe go to either the Estonian Business Angel Network, because they are very active. They have numerous deals happening every week, and there's just a very large investor base. In Latvian Business Angel Network, there's also some activity there, but I haven't heard that they have made too many deals lately. So just take that into account, that it might not be as quick as maybe other places. But the key thing here really is going and pitching and trying your hand out, because that's basically your entry point to raising funding. There's also on the left side, there's also the there's also the list of Estonian angel investors, which is compiled by Lift 99. And I think it's quite good resource for you to take a look at who are the most active angel investors and what kind of businesses do they invest. So there's a link to that, and you'll be able to check it out after the presentation as well. All right, sorry, we can go next. I'll try to move you guys somewhere otherwhere in my screen, because you're taking up a lot of space. The Zoom sidebars. Oh, all right, doesn't matter. Anyway, let's continue. And one of the funding options for early stage entrepreneurs, which is also very often used, is business accelerators or incubators. In principle, I would say you are in an incubator right now, because incubator is someone who typically doesn't invest, but they provide free knowledge. So that's the typical definition of an incubator, and we have plenty of incubators in Latvia. So in a sense, you are in one right now. However, business accelerators are the ones who actually do invest money on top of the mentorship they give to the companies. Typical check size for accelerator can be anywhere from 20K to 100K. What is kind of important is that the accelerators are typically have a very strong mandate where they invest. If angels, in a sense, have kind of very loose ideas or mandates where they typically invest in businesses that excite them, then an accelerator is typically vertically driven. It's, I would say every accelerator specializes on something. So it might be a good idea to kind of do your research before and understand which of the accelerators can actually fund your business, because not all of them can. So first thing to optimize for in the search for the perfect accelerator is the geography. That's the key thing, is because if you're based in some country, the accelerator will probably ask you to either re-register. For instance, if you're applying to a German accelerator, it might very often be the case that they require a German entity for it, even more so for the US-based companies. And for like Baltic-based, it's not so strictly. Most often you just have to have a European entity, but check that before. And the other thing to check is basically the market vertical they invest in. Yeah, we have a question. Perfect.
We actually have 2 questions. Previously, I was waiting for the time to, for a pause. But yeah, both questions come from Liam. And the first one was regarding your comments about the investors, how hard it is to get some. And is the competition lower in US?
The competition in US is actually, I would say, 10 times stronger and harder, because everyone wants to go in the US. So if you're an early stage company, I would never suggest you to go to US, just because you will waste a lot of time. But typically, US is something you want to take a look at when you already have a very strong base. You have strong pipeline, you have a strong customer base, you have, I would say, 10 to 20 employees in your company. You basically have a foundation for your business. Before you build that foundation in the home market, or at least the home continent, I would say, in the US it will be way more difficult, because everyone is going, because in the US you will be competing with Indian, with the Chinese, with the Latin American founders, and the markets are crazy. Like, they are super big. So yeah, I would say Europe would be something I would consider first. Plus, in Europe, there's a very big kind of advantage, is that in almost every European country, they have a state-backed VC fund. Like in Poland, they have 10 of them, I think. So you can really go shopping around in very different countries and actually raise some money. It's actually the case in Latvia as well. We also have a state-backed accelerators, and they invest in Romanian companies just because they don't have enough companies from Latvia to invest in. And that's exactly the same case in Poland, exactly the same case in Slovenia, and other kind of maybe not tier 1 countries as like Germany, UK, and France, but maybe smaller companies with smaller home markets, but they also do very active investing. So I would say rather in the early stage, look after that, and then kind of go into the US. The only exception in the US is the Y Combinator, I'd say. If you manage to get into the accelerator, which is called YC, or Y Combinator, which is basically the accelerator of all accelerators, it's like the godmother. So that's one of the best, I would say it's the best accelerator in the world, and it's the first accelerator in the world, actually. And if you manage to get there, then it's obviously a no-brainer, but the competition is pretty fierce there as well.
Okay, the next question is regarding business angels. Can I go to pitch several times, or is it only once in a lifetime per each association of angels?
So the question was basically, can you pitch to individuals and also to the network, right? Or
I think so. Liana, if you can please.
Yes, we can elaborate. I understand it's some associations, so they're having some meetups, those business angels. Is it so?
Yeah,
so if
that's exactly.
I go to pitch my idea, let's say to Estonian meetup, I'm not like maybe not yet so successful. Can I do it in 4 months again, or that would be seen as a bad thing? I should like really do it properly from the first time, and that's it. But people go and return and pitch again and develop idea and pitch again.
I think it's a very good and valid question you have. The answer is it depends in a sense, but I would say you can. But my suggestion would be to first test your pitch on individual investors and then go to a network. Like in the network, you want to appear as strong as you can. So if you can, maybe before that, you can maybe pitch to some 1 or 2 people you know, or meet on LinkedIn or something like that, and then go stronger into the network. I would suggest doing that approach, because there's the saying, you have only one chance to make a good first impression. So you want to really use that in your advantage, and you want to create this first impression as good as you can. But then again, startups develop very fast, right? The pace is super fast, and things can change very quickly. So it can also be the case that you pitch something, 5 months pass, and you actually have pivoted to a completely different idea, and you're doing something completely different in the same market. And I would say it makes sense to go back only if there's some significant development in your business. Because going and pitching the same thing probably wouldn't be too logical, because they already either said no or there wasn't interest for some reason. So basically, yeah, try to go in as strong as you can, but obviously you can go back as well.
Thank you.
There are 2 more questions in the chat, but I think they can also be answered after the, or would you like to answer them now?
I don't see them, but I can answer them now.
Okay, then the first one is from Michaels. Is it even possible to get fundraising on idea level?
Depends on the team. I think yes, but you have to have very strong experience in the field you're doing it. Think of it this way: the less experience you have in the industry, the more you will have to prove yourself. So the idea works only on very strong teams. So that's kind of the key here. And if you have maybe I don't know your personal backgrounds, maybe some of your grandparents are very rich and they just have a lot of inheritance to give you. So maybe you just go to a family dinner and you pitch them idea and they give you money to start the business. It might be also perfectly normal scenario. So definitely it's possible to get the funding on idea stage, but then you have to have very, very strong team, and you have to prove that you can execute with this money.
Okay, thank you.
Don't be shy, you can also talk.
Okay, so there is one more question, one kind of request. So I'll start with a request.
Yep.
Is there any website or database where you could get a list of all the accelerators, VCs, and grants?
It's like in 3 slides, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then the next question: if you are a Latvian startup, can you still attract investors, accelerators, grants from other European Union countries?
Definitely, yes, you can, and I would even suggest doing that. It works completely well, and I think the best deals are always cross country, because you can get more people with more experience. So try to get in as many diverse people as you can, diverse sources of funding, and don't be afraid to combine things as well. You can perfectly well kind of raise 50K from angels, and then you need I don't know, 500K on research, and you find that European Commission call for a grant, and you can take that as well. So kind of there's it's up to you how you do it. It's there's no market standard. Okay, there are some rules that I'm telling you here, but really it's your company, you're building it how you like and how you want to work in it. So my advice is really trying to get as many kind of people as you can who can contribute to your idea, And second, look for equity-free funding as well. I'm going to cover it a little bit too, about the grant options too. But yeah, if that's kind of the question for now, let's maybe finish up with accelerators in a few slides I have prepared here. And then if there are more questions on these types, then I'm happy to answer those also. So I'll finish with the accelerator stuff. So in principle, Accelerator is something like a school for business development. I would say it's a very good for first-time founders. It's basically a place where you get money and you also get education, because accelerators do provide you with some very valuable connections. I used to work in Riga-based Overkill Ventures, which was an La Telecom or TET accelerator, and we helped our companies to develop these pilots with the local telco TET as well. And connections like these is something very, very useful that you can have in early stages, and try to look for accelerators who have these connections. Something more that you want to kind of check is maybe who are the managing directors or the partners of the accelerator, because those are the people who will essentially be opening doors for you. So that's maybe one more kind of thing if you want to really research deeply who are the key people in the accelerator. That's something to take a look at. What's their background? Where have they worked? Maybe some of them has worked in a company that you want to do sale to. So that can really give you even more kind of exposure and advantage over other companies. A typical don't for the accelerator, I would say, is again, don't give up too much equity. The market standard, I would say, is somewhere from 3 to 7%. In some cases, it's 9%. I'm touching on this a lot because I think founders give too much equity too soon and then don't have a chance to grow a business globally. So again, one more thing on the list of 10,000 things you have to think about is basically how much of equity you want to give away. So I'm giving these market standards for you so you don't kind of give up too much at any stage. Here are some lists of accelerators I have for you that I think are reasonable to apply. Baltic accelerators feature these, Overkill, Build It, Startup Wise Guys, who are running like crazy loads of programs. I think they have like some 5 or 10 programs active. Also Commercialization Reactor, they focus on deep tech companies. More accelerators will be coming next year because the state agency is procuring this service. So there will be more funding available, but these are, I would say, the kind of the Latvian plus Estonian accelerators that are active right now. And of course, you can look also at international accelerators that I already mentioned, Y Combinator, Techstars, and in Germany, there's Axel Springer plug and play accelerator that I think would be a very good fit to B2B and SaaS companies and many more. So these are kind of the ones I would recommend you to look at when you're building the company. Also 500 startups, of course, and then other names. You'll have them in some of the lists as well. There are tons of lists of VCs. I think you can even get scared of them. Any more questions? I see the chat is booming.
There are 2, I think. Well, one is a bit longer, so bear with me, please. When MVP is ready with your own investment, now startup needs more funds to have a test run, do you wait for investment and pause the process, or you should keep on putting your own money and continuing your startup until you get your first investment?
I mean, obviously depends on how much money can you put in and how much of a personal runway you have, but the better case is not to pause anything, because for startup, the critical thing is speed. As fast as you can move and as fast as you can develop your product further, that's basically everything you'll be evaluated on. So I would say, but I would even not say either or. I would say it's like that. When you have an idea, start researching on potential investors that might be investing in this field. Then in parallel, build an MVP for it. When you are, I would say, 30% ready with the MVP, start reaching out to angel investors, setting up meetings, coffee meetings, just telling them about the idea. Not even, nobody's going to invest like this. Like they're going to see progress. So when you're like So when you're like 70% ready with the MVP, I would say that's the point where you would like to have at least a short list of angel investors who are mildly interested in your business. So that's kind of it's not very linear. You don't have to wait and then only start something else. I would say it's rather like a spiral that you work on something, but in parallel you have to keep all the other kind of things going around. So that's kind of, I would say that's very important on the time aspect here as well.
Thank you. And the next question comes from Liana again. What is the process of negotiations for equity share? Do accelerators give their take or leave it, or also negotiate?
Accelerators actually typically have take it or leave it deals. Very rarely you can negotiate with accelerator. You can negotiate with angels or with VCs, but accelerators have a standard term sheet, and maybe in some edge cases they will give off like a discount of 1 or 2%, but typically I would say it's not the case, and they'll just stick to their own term sheet. Yeah, that's good. All right, let's move on then. I appreciate the questions. It's very good. Let's keep them going. I think that's the way to go. Perfect. By a show of hands, or maybe Paul, you can give me a bit of an insight into this from the crowd we have here. How many are building B2C hardware companies? Are any products, I would say, like, I don't know, new headphones or whatever, like basically product, not software, but product, hardware product companies that are B2C. Do you have any idea?
It would be great if you could write in the chat. I know there are a couple of hardware ideas here, but it still would be great if... Okay, Albert is building B2C.
I'm asking this because crowdfunding, Kickstarter or Indiegogo is something that's very specific, and you can, I'll talk a little bit about it, but I don't think it's generally applicable to everyone. So I just wanted to get a glimpse of how much of the audience can actually relate to what I'm saying. But okay, for general education purposes, here it goes. You'll hear about it anyway. So obviously all of you know about crowdfunding. You have maybe went into Kickstarter, maybe you have backed something yourself. What's Kickstarter good for? Kickstarter is perfect way for B2C hardware companies to raise money, awareness, and also finance for any development. For crowdfunding, it's basically how you think about it about the mechanics of crowdfunding is that you basically pre-sell your product before it's built. So let's take an example. You have an idea for a hardware product, but in order to build it, you need to, I don't know, to have a 500,000 euro investment into the molds or into some equipment, and it's just super expensive to do it. No VC will probably give you money for it, like take it like as it is. It's probably not going to happen. But your product is something that's, it has a universal consumer market. Generally, people could use it. You think it's a growing trend, or there's some very strong kind of marketing people in your team, and you think you could do this Kickstarter thing, I think it's very worth considering it. Why so? Because crowdfunding is equity-free fundraising. By doing these crowdfunding campaigns, you're not giving up any equity. However, very important note here is that crowdfunding is very competitive. Kickstarter has like loads of products online, so you have to be very, very good at marketing yourself, at making a compelling video, and it takes a lot of time and top-notch marketing to actually build it. So my advice here is actually, if you think you want to go with crowdfunding, outsource a crowdfunding agency. There's an excellent crowdfunding agency in Armenia, actually, that's called Crowdfunding Agency. They have like 80 people in their staff, and all they do for business is building Kickstarter campaigns. One of their companies, portfolio companies, actually has helped building Pomo Brush, which raised, I think, over $1 million on Kickstarter. Crowdfunding agency only works with products that can raise over $1 million on these platforms. So if they choose to work with you, it's already a good sign. There are numerous agencies like this. I have just personally worked with them. I know they're quite good, but there are numerous other ways you can go around this. There are numerous other agencies as well. Of course, you can do it also yourself, but it just will be very, very difficult. There are a couple of Latvian companies that have been successful at crowdfunding. maybe you know Game Changer Audio or AirDog that was sold last year. Both of these companies have raised a few rounds on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So if you want to kind of learn more about this, those are the guys to probably talk to. One thing to kind of take into account in this crowdfunding landscape is that it's the mechanics of it is a little bit strange, is that you have to set up a very realistic goal for yourself, because if you raise less than this goal, your company will be your not company your campaign will basically fail. And that's important, because imagine you set a goal of raising 100K, you raise 85K instead, and you don't get any of that money. It gets returned to the pledgers. So like mathematics here is quite important to actually think about what's the amount you can raise and what will you be doing to actually raise it, because essentially it's basically a marketing job. You can use all the marketing channels, which is paid advertising, which is all the social media that we have, and also working with media and influencers to actually raise the awareness and hype about the product. But what's good, of course, is that you get a prepayment of the product. People just purchase the product before you actually have it, so you have the cash to actually develop the product. So that's kind of the mechanics of crowdfunding. Maybe someone finds it useful for this project or anything else you're doing in future. I would say these are the most popular. Kickstarter and Indiegogo are the most popular crowdfunding platforms. Probably there are more, but if you really want to take a shot at this, I would go with either of these two, because these are actually the most popular ones. Technical note, to go on Kickstarter, you need to be, you can't do it as a Latvian registered company. In Indiegogo, you can. So that's just something to take into account on the legality of things. All right, VCs. My favorite topic. So do we have any more questions in the meantime?
There was one question from Liana. How much, and another one just arrived, how much this outsourcing costs? I think it was about the company that provided the
crowdfunding. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the exact terms, but they don't take any upfront payment, but they take some percentage of the total capital raised. So that's the payment that they take. But they actually kind of, if they decide to work with you, they don't take any upfront payment, actually.
That also answers, I think, the first part of the next question. And the second part is who is the best and whom you can recommend for this? Which company, I guess?
Yeah, I as I said, maybe I have worked with the crowdfunding formula. I think that's how they were called, TCF. But there are like, you can Google like crowdfunding agencies, or you can look on freelancer sites as Upwork or Fiverr. I think Upwork is better. And then just find these agencies, because there are I would say there are some 10 in the world that focus solely on Kickstarter campaigns. So you have to just do your research. I know Pomobrush guys, before, when they were fundraising, they actually interviewed like 3 or 4 companies and then chose to go with the crowdfunding formula. But yeah, basically I don't know actually personally more, but definitely there are. So just, yeah, we'll have to Google yourself. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. I think for now we don't have any more questions.
All right, excellent. Perfect. We're also good on time, I think. So yeah, next step is about VCs, which is maybe not so relevant to you at the moment, but I'll go briefly to look at it. VCs are professional investors. They look to invest to actually return their money. It's their job, so they will look way more professionally on the deal. VCs, as well as accelerators, categorized by stage and industry. Majority of them have some kind of mandate, either kind of they can only invest in software or in hardware in Europe or in Baltics or in Latvia, all of these different things. So whenever you approach any of the VCs, just know that you need to have need to do your background research and to see if they are even investing in something that you're building. The best way how to get to a company is actually getting an intro. Getting an intro is an art itself, but the logic of it is that the best way how to get to an investor is practically through a recommendation of another founder. So through your networking or building your company, try to connect to those people who have raised money from companies that you would also like to get money from. I think in Baltics it's not very difficult because there are numerous of VC firms, and then you could potentially get an intro. There's actually a very good blog post about how to get an intro. I can share that later on, which can also help you with both fundraising and also doing sales. But obviously getting personal intro is the best way to go about it. Lastly, the main point is just to remember that it takes a lot of time and good metrics to get VCs on board. If before you could get the story together with having a strong team and MVP, then VCs typically would look at something called product market fit. And they would only invest in something that you already kind of is working, that people are buying, and they want to kind of they can see that there's a strong growth month over month. And if you attract capital from VCs, that's definitely something to take mental note of. The don'ts here is basically not building a complicated structure of a corporate structure, because if you get VCs from different countries, they will most probably ask you to register in very different countries as well. That's unfortunately the case if you raise in the US or in the UK. They typically don't want to deal with Latvian jurisdiction, so they ask you to register a Delaware C Corp or register in the UK. So that's just something to take into account, that the larger you will grow, you'll probably need to move some of the company outside of your home base. However, there's a very good precedent recently. Bolt raised 600 million, I think 2 months ago, which is the largest round, I think, recently in Baltics. And actually, they had all the investment transferred to the Estonian entity. The whole round was about 0.5% of Estonia's GDP, which I think is just crazy, and that a single company can attract this large amount of money. But I think this precedent only shows that that actually it's doable, and more and more investors get acquainted with Baltic region, and they know that it's safe to do business here as well. Here's a link to the VC funds and accelerators in Europe. There's also some links about US as well, but I would suggest starting with that. I think there are like over 500 firms on this list, so you'll have places to look at. There are numerous of these lists online. Best place to look for them is on Twitter, I would say, and on LinkedIn. Some people are just sending them around. So I would suggest following some investors on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and sometimes you can just stumble upon these resources too. So just wanted to kind of recap on this angels versus VCs thing. As I already mentioned, I'll not go too much into detail because we covered it already. VCs will basically look for returns, and then they'll have due diligence processes in the companies, and angels are someone who will invest their own money and want to kind of get experience and returns in this investment. So that's just something you have to remember stage-wise, that first you want to go to angels and accelerators, and only then you want to go to funds, because funds will typically look for some more advanced metrics before investing. Touching upon a little bit on the Latvian state support, here is some list on what we have here in Latvia as support mechanisms for startups. This graph is, I think, 2 years old, so we might have added some more things as well. Some things we already have covered, but I'll just leave it here for you as well. Just highlighting that I think one of the state support initiatives that we have are the Latvian Magnetic Latvia Incubators that offer 50% marketing co-financing. They don't invest in your company, but they offer to offset 50% of your marketing and research and development costs, which is an excellent way how to grow your company too. I know a lot of companies that are residing in these incubators. Then there is also the Magnetic Latvia startup division in LIA, which is the state development agency, and they also have a lot of strong programs in place. One of them I would highlight is startup law, which is basically a law where you can apply with your company, and if you get accepted, you can get a flat tax rate on your salaries, basically. So if you have a company of, a few people, you're paying salaries to them, you can get effectively, I think, a 50% cashback in form of tax, which again is an excellent opportunity to use. And I would really suggest looking into these too. There are also links to it on the LIA GovLV program section too. Then let's touch upon a little bit on non-equity funding. And here I am not an expert at all. So I just will give you a glimpse with two very excellent webinars that both I think are 2 hours because there are so much to cover. But if you really want to go into detail, but a couple of programs that you can take a look on is Horizon Europe and Norway grants that's been established recently. They do work with green tech and ed tech and other impact companies, and there is a chance to get this funding too. The good thing about non-equity funding is that you don't have to give up equity, obviously, which is excellent. The bad thing about this type of funding is that typically the reporting process is quite heavy, and yeah, you'll probably need to, if you get this grant, you'll probably need to get either a very, very strong accountant or even a person in-house who will do all the reporting processes, because it can be very, very heavy. But on this, I would really recommend checking this Horizon Europe, which is basically the extension of Horizon 2020, which ended last year, and then check out these programs. And if you're really into this these opportunities, there is a Latvian Startup Association's webinar, which I think they have like an hour packed with all kinds of different equity opportunities that you can use. So just check it there. I think it will be more useful than us spending here an hour on non-equity fundraising options. So here are the resources. You'll have it right after this presentation. So short and sweet, how are we doing with the questions?
There are two, I think. Let's start with the first one, and while you answer, I'll understand if the second one is also a question. So the first one is it necessary to have more than one founder in the startup before getting investment? Does it also matter if you have just one founder in the startup in the eyes of investors?
So typically, you need to have a strong team, and team typically is more than one person. So I would suggest that it's good to have, like, it's traditional, it's good to have a founder who is strong in one area, let's say business, and the other founder who is a technical founder. I would say that's the bare minimum you would need to build a startup. Then you can kind of grow in whichever direction it's important to you. Is it marketing? Is it product? Is it something else? Is it finance or anything else really? So I would say that one founder is not enough to oftentimes. Of course, there are cases of single founders raising capital, but it's going to be more difficult, I can say to you upfront. So take it into account. But of course, it's also possible. It just will require more work. If you don't want to have a founder, but you want to have, you also can have key employees type of things, where you have an employee who has, for instance, 3 to 5% of the company too. They are not considered the founder, but I think it's a good idea to add these people to the kind of founding team, because oftentimes it's not only the founder, it's the employees building the company, and giving up equity to the employees is also a very good practice. That's also something that can potentially work.
Okay, the second one wasn't a question, it's more of a comment. And Roman wrote, as far as I know, it's pretty easy currently to open a startup company in Estonia, and you can do it all online, and they provide a lot of benefits too. But we just received another question from Albert. Where to get useful information on bootstrapping?
By building a business, I guess. I mean, bootstrapping is just a name for how you finance your operations with profit. So yeah, I guess the most useful information is how to build a product that people want. And that's probably you guys are going to cover here. There are numerous blogs and then lectures on that online as well. I would suggest you taking YC's Startup School. It's a free of charge resource that you can, it's a 10-week program, which is run by the largest accelerator in the world, by Combinator. It's free of charge. I think it accepts almost everyone. and you can just access the materials on YouTube and on their own site, and there you can learn a lot about how to build a great product that people want. And yeah, I think that kind of answers the bootstrapping bit in terms of, yeah, how can you earn money so that you don't have to raise funding, which is obviously desirable, but not always possible. All right, perfect. Cool. So let's maybe take a few minutes to actually see how the fundraising process typically looks. I'll also show you a couple of materials that you need to have in place when you're fundraising, what the investors would normally expect. So this is kind of the way how you get to money is by doing a research on the investors. So at first you just have a numerous dots, so you'll have all the resources I sent to you, you'll have like hundreds of different company names, and what your key thing is actually to identify who the right investors are for you. And to do that, you have to understand their investment strategy. You have to go and see where they invest, what is the industry, where are they located, what do they look for in their potential companies. And you'll actually need to just put your time and energy into researching that. So yeah, it's geography, stage, amounts, markets, and the investment thesis if they have any. And these are the key things to look at. Look at what they do, look at their portfolio, look at their databases that they have, and just actually see what data you have there and what do they invest in. Because sometimes they say, you know, we invest in deep tech companies, but then at the end, what you can see from their website that they actually invest in SaaS. So by taking a look at that, you can at portfolio, you can actually see what they actually want to invest in. And of course, you have to check also if they are even investing right now. That's actually the case of Superangel at the moment. For the next 2 months, we are not investing because we are now closing our next fund. So that's also very often the case with the VC funds, is that they are not fully they have a fully deployed fund at the moment. I'll also go kind of, this is something very standard that you will see in terms of sales process, right? You'll have a pipeline and you'll need to navigate your sales leads or the investors through this pipeline. So first step, how to get into touch with investor is through an intro that I would suggest. And basically it's a forwardable intro email, and your desired response from the person who receives this email is, I would like to learn more. That's your first encounter with the person. And that's kind of how you should structure the email too. The second point is a short slide deck. If they like what they saw in the intro email, they will most probably ask for some follow-up. But you don't want to overwhelm them with like a 20-page slide deck and a financial model. They're not interested into that. They just want to get a glimpse of what you're doing. So that's why we separate these two things. I really strongly suggest to follow this framework of having a short deck and a long deck for various purposes, because that's basically the way how you represent your company. After this 5-slide deck, then comes the full deck, which at that stage they should say, just shut up and take my money, right? And they should be really willing to just invest in you. But here's an example in how an intro email can look. This is something I received a while ago. It basically states the question in hand: can you make an intro to an EQT firm? I know you're connected on LinkedIn, maybe you can do it. And then there is a fully copyable and forwardable intro that you don't have to write it yourself. Like for me, it's very easy to do this intro because I can just take this email and forward it to the person. That's exactly what I want to do. I don't want to spend 20 minutes of my time trying to figure out what this founder is doing and trying to figure out how to present him. No, he did it for me. He made it easy for me. I'll probably do it for him because he has done his job already. So yes, the intro should be addressed to the final recipient. And yeah, just very brief in content, a couple of paragraphs about your startup, relevant statement. Relevant statement here is like, I see you have invested in this industry. We're also building something very exciting here. Or I have seen you have invested in Latvia this year. we are an up-and-coming startup from Riga, and we really would appreciate your help. Something that makes it relevant for the person who is opening the email to connect, actually. And obviously, every email should end with an ask or something that's a call to action, right? You should be asking for meeting, for feedback, or for anything else that you deem valuable, or for an intro to another person or whatever. But always end the meeting with an ask so that the person can act on it. So a short deck typically consists of, I'm not going to go into what a pitch deck is. I know you haven't had a 2-hour session on that, but so basically a short deck consists of 5 slides: problem, solution, market, traction, and team. That's exactly what you should focus on, give or take. Can be 5 slides, can be more, but for this purpose, I would call it 5-slide deck. Yeah, there's some duplication here, and the full investor deck is something that you already covered within the previous session, so I'm not going to go into that. You already have this info, but here's also a snapshot of what the full investor deck should also have. Yeah, and that's basically what I wanted to cover. It's quite a long lecture, and I know that typically people can't focus for so long, but I also have some more information about valuations if you're interested in how much actually is the company valued, which is typically a very interesting bit. Like, how can I understand how much is my company worth? So I can give you a little bit of glimpse into market and kind of the rules here. So valuation is something that you should be calculating from your milestones. So one way to raise money is actually to think, okay, I am now at this stage. I have built an MVP with this team, but this is not enough. I need to grow. And in order to grow, I need to enter 3 more markets. And in order to enter those markets, I need to hire 5 more people in each country, for instance, and develop this product to this and that. And that's something you can put into an Excel and actually calculate how much runway do you need for these 12 to 18 months to execute on your vision. So that's my number 1 suggestion, is that you should be raising based on how much you can achieve in 12 to 18 months. In idea stage, it can even be 6 to 8 months. This is more like seed level, I would say 12 to 18. But if you're pitching to an investor, the runway can be shorter. But that's the mechanic, how you think about it. Then you have to account also for the fact that majority of founder-friendly investors will require to have a 10% employee stock option pool, which already reduces your company shareholding to 90%, which you can attribute. So take that into account. That's a standard market practice. It's a good thing to have. You have to reward your employees. Why would anyone want to work in a startup? I don't know. You have to show them why. And the stock options are exactly the way how to do it. And obviously the vision and the team and the pizzas and the bean bags and everything. But first and foremost, it's the option to grow together with the company. It's very important. You have to account for that. So the rest of it is 90%. Then you have you and your co-founder. Let's say you split it equally. So you have 45 and 45 already. Then you'll have an investor joining, an angel investor. They take up 10%. How do you think from where this 10% will go? Of course, it will go from you. It's not that the company shareholding will increase to 110%. No, you will have less of your own company. And that's what you have to remember. Each stage, each funding round you take will reduce your shareholding. Of course, your shareholding will be more valuable. But at the end of the day, you'll be owning very little of what you have built. But hopefully, this very little will be worth very, very much. So that's just the mechanics of how fundraising works. And it's completely normal that you raise 5 or 6 rounds and maybe you're left with less than 10% of your company. It's completely possible to be like this. And it can also be the case. So don't be afraid to lose shareholding. Don't hold too strongly to it. It's completely normal practice. But of course, you don't ever lose more than 10 to 20% in one round. That's just giving away too much. So there's this fine balance you have to find. But I'm just giving it out here because it's very important. And I see founders making these mistakes and essentially building companies that nobody is going to invest in. Average round size in Baltics recently pre-seed has been anywhere from 50K to 3 million because of latest Estonian rounds. But in Latvia, I would say pre-seed is somewhere, I would say around, I don't know, 200K, 300K, something like that. Seed round can be anywhere from 5 to 15, and Series A is anywhere from 20 million to more. And one more thing about the negotiation that was also a question in the session. Remember that discussing with venture capital or investors or with angels, it's negotiation process first and foremost. So you will be the one who is kind of making the decision, who is negotiating the rules of the game. So be well know, kind of your most important job is just to know everything as much as you can about fundraising, about your company, and being able to answer those questions that they will have. And once you have that, I think you're in a very, very strong position to go into the fundraising game and actually to raise money for your company. I've added a link to Change Ventures, the latest Baltic funding report. All the recent rounds, valuations, amounts are there. So you can see how big the rounds are and what are the typical valuations in the Baltics. Yeah, so that's an example of how a term sheet will look like. Once you will actually close an investor, they will come back to you with something like this. And at this stage, I would suggest getting a lawyer because term sheets can come in very different ways and forms, and you want to have the kind of the regulation in place. So once you have a term sheet or a legal agreement, if you don't have your capacity yourself, I would really strongly suggest to get a lawyer or a legal counsel or someone who can just help you at least understand on what all of these terms mean. Of course, there are all of the explanations on Investopedia and all other kind of internet resources, but yeah, I would really strongly suggest to get professional help on this because it's very, very important. Because as we discussed in the very beginning, investing is like getting married, and you want to have all the kind of legal background in place to actually have this partnership mutually beneficial and successful. All right, perfect. It's that's basically what we covered today, guys. It's been an hour. It's a bit more than an hour, just as we said, an hour and 20. Perfect. Those were the things I wanted to get across about fundraising. I hope it has been useful to you at now or anytime in the future. I'm open to answer any questions. There's actually homework. Paul, do you want to maybe cover that?
I can, of course. So yeah, the homework that Diāna prepared for you guys is basically to research and find 3 to 5 investors, accelerators, or other funding opportunities for your idea or company. So basically, yeah, look over the list that Diāna has provided in her presentation, in her slides. As I wrote in the chat, I will share the slides and the resources channel on Slack. So no worries, it's not going to disappear after this meeting. Yeah, then later on, just send to me the 3 to 5 entities you found that would be most valuable for your idea. And that is the key point here, that the ones that are most valuable for you, because you know, you won't ask investment from anyone. Yeah, as Diāna also mentioned. So yeah, that's the homework.
Yeah, perfect. I think that would be a very useful exercise to do, even though maybe you don't have a final idea, but at least get a glimpse of the ecosystem. But all right, time for me to stop sharing and go back into human mode and see if there are any other questions. All right, thank you as well. Any other questions, maybe?
There was one question I missed to ask, which Rathod wrote some time ago. Any idea who were the Bolt, and Airbnb investment companies?
Sorry, I was reading the comments. Can you?
So yeah, the question I forgot to read was, any idea who were the Bolt, and Airbnb investment companies?
The first investors, you mean? Maybe who asked the question? Maybe you can clarify.
Yeah, Rathod, can you elaborate, please?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much. A wonderful, presentation, really helpful, and we'll really work out the instructions given. I was just asking that any idea who are the investors who invested on Bolt, and Airbnb, since they are, digital marketplace on mobile apps?
It's actually public information. You can find it on Crunchbase. Fun story, but Bolt is actually our portfolio companies. We have invested in Bolt at Superangel, so we are one of the first investors as well. But with Bolt, I'm not sure. But with Bolt, yeah, the first investors actually were local angels, and then also I think Ruby Light invested as well in Bolt. Superangel, we invested in Bolt as well. A couple of other angel networks in Estonia invested. So I think you can take a look at Bolt and then Bolt on Crunchbase, because typically they list their investors there. But yeah, that's something I can get from the top of my mind.
Yeah, because I tried to, approach few VCs and angel investors, but most of them, they said that we only, invest on a hardware idea, not a mobile apps marketplace. And they said that we invest on the idea which is B2B and not C2C. So my idea is C2C, it's also B2C, C2C. So I wanted to know which are the, VCs grants particularly who invest and are interested to invest.
Yeah, in this list of Estonian VCs and angels, there's also categorization by industries that they're interested in. So you can take a look there and yeah, just filter out those. But the approach of looking at who has invested in this company like Bolt and maybe going after those investors, that's probably a good way how to go about it, to look at those investors too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I say that we have any more questions in the chat as of right now? So yeah, anybody who has any questions in mind whatsoever, feel free to use the opportunity, this moment, to ask them. Starting to seem that everything was clear with them.
All right, perfect. That's so I looked forward to reading about investor news. Investment news about people raising money. That's good.
Oh, hello.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, Diana, thanks a lot. It's a great information. I would like to ask if there is some usual methodology of team assessment from VC side. Which moments they're looking on firstly?
Each VC has it differently, but in my experience, so first thing you look at is the industry experience. Does the team has any industry experience in what they're building? Basically, you want to see if they actually know what they're doing, simply put. Second, what you want to see in the team is complementary skill set. Like you would normally not want to see 3 marketing people building a deep tech company. So what you really want to see is complementary skill sets, and that's what I told you about the co-founding mix, that you need to have like technical and business and marketing or whatever that suits you. So that's kind of very important bit, is basically how the team works and are the skill sets complementary. So that's that. What else? Ambition of the team is very important. How big do you want to grow this company? There's a funny story from my work, is that I used to, in my work, I was interviewing some Polish startup, and I was asking like, how global can it be? And they said, well, global, it will be very global, Poland global. And that's very typical from like Baltic founders as well, is that they build a Latvian entity and then they will expand to Estonia and maybe then to Lithuania. And then maybe in a few years, they will conquer 3 more countries. So basically the idea and the irony of it is that you really need to impress the VCs with your international plans and ambitions. So I would say that. So basically, yeah, so that would be the kind of the 3 key things that I would highlight here.
Oh, thanks a lot. Got it.
So there is one more question I see from Roman. What is approximate minimum amount of funds? Usually VC angels invest in Baltics at seed round. It's very different. Like it's like standardly, like we invest, for instance, in one deal, we would put somewhere between 25K to 2 to 300K. That would be our standard investment amount. So it's very much depends on the deal. I would say, yeah, that's kind of the spectrum that we are talking about. It can be very small, something as 25 or 50K, or it can be a larger sum to like 200, 300,000 as well.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
It's related to renewable energy startups. In your experience or history, how many startups have you seen regarding renewable energy?
I think it's a very hot topic right now because of all the kind of green and clean tech. It's kind of very hot topic in investors' eyes too. Let me see, what do we consider clean tech? I think in Latvia, I could maybe name a few. So maybe I'm not very familiar with them because we don't invest like much in them. We haven't had any kind of renewable investment, renewable energy investment. We just don't do energy investments actually in Superangel. So maybe I'm not so exposed to it, but I think there are some. And I think with these ideas, you can actually go more after non-equity funding as well because they're research heavy. And you can typically get more backing from the government providers too for these types of ideas. So yeah, not very good. Can't give you a very good answer to your question because I'm not very experienced in it. But I would say that it's growing, and in Latvia, I think it could be like 2 to 5 companies operating in this space.
Okay, thanks.
There's one more question from Albert. Did you notice some investing changes happened in investment trends during pandemic? I think not really, because like startups were massively winning the whole pandemic like story, because I mean, unless you were in travel tech, but also that bounced back. But basically, I think it maybe was a little bit more quiet for a month or two, but if you look at the investment volume and people starting companies, I think it's as large as it was as ever. So I don't think anything has fallen less, because the digital space dominates the whole kind of pandemic crisis, and work from home has only fueled startups to develop. So I think the main trend is really that more people are starting to think about their companies. So that's definitely a trend I see. More first-time founders, people leaving their jobs because they're not interested in working with what they do at daily life and want to build something more. So yeah, I think that's kind of the trends that I see in my work. And yeah, definitely a lot of investment volume. This year, actually, Latvian startups have raised the most money ever, almost as much as in the last decade. So that's very good results too. Further on, more questions. Fintech, crypto and blockchain technology. Maybe Ivis, you can write more a little bit about this question. I don't understand what you mean. Like investing in crypto, or and while we're waiting for that, should we give voting rights to each investor despite of its investment size? Okay, voting rights is something you'll probably not even consider for the, I don't know, next 2 years, but largely it depends on the investment structure. Typically the Series A stage is where you form an advisory board, and that's where you kind of have the voting rights for the start for the company. I would say that at an early stage, it's not very founder friendly to ask for voting rights. We don't do it. At max, we would maybe ask for an observer seat on the board if we're doing like a larger ticket. But yeah, I wouldn't focus on it maybe right now too much. But yeah, as you go on, probably the investor will dictate that. And probably not worth giving to every investor, but the largest investors, obviously, in the round. Like if you have like 10 different investors, only give the rights to the investors who contribute the larger portion of the round. About the fintech and crypto question, I think it's very broad. a lot of companies invest in crypto and blockchain. That's something we don't invest in as well. As you see, there's already crystallized a lot of things we don't invest in. To be honest, you just have to research all these VC lists. There are plenty of companies who invest in blockchain and crypto too. Just have to look for it yourself. Then maybe we're a little bit over time, but it's okay. We'll cover all the questions you have. There's a question about non-diluted shares. If so, what is the case scenario? I think you can put a clause for some portion of the shares to be non-dilutive. Like if you want to maintain a minimum shareholding in the company, that's fine. It will just probably be something like 10% maybe, or probably not less.
No, I'm asking about the investor. If investor asks you that I need non-diluted shares, then.
Okay. Okay, understood. Yeah, that's also not very founder friendly, but if your investor asks that, then you have to negotiate. Well, obviously you want to dilute everyone like equally in the round. You don't want to have everyone a preferential treatment, but it's often the case. Yeah, you just have to negotiate it with the investor. There's not very strong. It's just very difficult to comment without knowing the deal. I would say that you would try to at least negotiate it with your investor to reduce the non-dilutive shares to a very bare minimum.
Okay, so I don't know if Diāna, if you're willing to, maybe we can take there is another question, I think, already in the chat.
Is there any Excel sheet or methodology to make your own valuation? You mean cap table, basically? Because
yes, if you have your own startup and you have made already your MVP, so how do you make your own valuation? That what is the value of your MVP?
Okay. I would suggest you look at the report of Change Ventures, which basically looks at what kind of companies have raised what rounds. I can tell you that on average, the valuation can be anywhere from, I would say, 1 to 5 million at pre-seed stage in the Baltics. If you're more than 5 million, you're very kind of successful. If you are less than 1 million, then you're very, very early stage. But that's kind of the realm you would be operating in. So yeah, tips on this. One is checking the report on what the venture space is here in the Baltics and just trying to ballpark yourself there. Then other I would suggest is making this runway approach, or what I described previously, basically what can you achieve with this money, and then understand how much you want to dilute at this round, and then making this calculation accordingly. And the third is, basically making a cap table that you have and just modeling these scenarios. For a cap table, I can suggest you taking a look at Startup Estonia cap table example. It's basically startupestonia.com. There's resources, and then you can see cap table template there and fill it in for your company too. All right.
There is another question in the chat, and I think we can take it as the final one by Roman.
All right. What's the question?
Why there is increase in the seed size investment rounds lately in Estonia, as you mentioned? Is it trend, or the product services have high growth potential?
Well, it's just, that more and more people see how successful VC startups are and how much money they can earn eventually. And just more people want to get into the game, both in the investor side and both in the startup side. Plus, after Bolt, a lot of people, after Bolt's recent round, a lot of people got equity in this company. A lot of people got maybe some liquidity or cash after selling their shares, and they want to invest. So basically, that's basically the reason. More and more people getting exposed to this market. more and more people available to invest, and more and more people with money to invest. And that's basically the reason why the rounds are getting bigger, and they're actually very, very competitive. And the other thing is that there's just a lot of funds right now. Like in Estonia, I could name under 10 VC funds that are actively investing in companies. So they're also competing for deals. And yeah, that's basically the case.
Okay, so I think we are just about ready to wrap this up. So, well, first of all and foremost, thank you, Diāna. Thank you for the amazing lecture and for coming here and speaking to us with us. It was definitely valuable. I learned some new things as well, and I'm pretty certain that the participants of the How to Startup course learned as well. So really a huge thanks to you for being here tonight. Yeah, if the participants have any more questions to you, can they reach you somewhere?
Yeah, I would suggest to use email as the thing. I try to be responsive, and yeah, if you want, then my email will be in the presentation too, so you can use that. Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you. And regarding the homework, as we discussed during the checkpoint call last week, it is not the deadline is no more at the Friday at 6 o'clock, because yeah, we understood that it doesn't really work that way. It's not the best sort of option. So the new deadline is going to be by the upcoming Monday, right before the next lecture. So if you could send in the done task before the upcoming lecture, that would be just amazing. And of course, if you're running late with that, just let me know and we'll figure something out. The deadline is not that strict. It's not like if you miss it, you're out. So, but still, try to keep to it, please. And yeah, regarding the next session, well, there we will look at the legal side of things, how to find the best business partners, how to register the company, and more. And the mentor next week is going to be Arta Bašina, head of the operations at the Latvian fintech startup Nordigen. And just like Diāna, she has also been a part of Overkill Ventures and more, loads more under her resume, so to say. So yeah, once more, thank you to Diāna. It was a pleasure having you here, and thank you all of you for listening. And yeah, so that's it for the fourth session of How to Start Up. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.